Leo Kingston dedicated his existence to sealing agreements, outmaneuvering rivals, and mastering every result. Yet, despite his vast wealth and influence, he was utterly unprepared for the moment when a 6-year-old girl with dark curls and captivating blue eyes grasped his sleeve by the pool of his opulent hotel and softly implored, "Please, mister, help me. My mother is not waking up." Initially, he believed she had confused him with another person. As he trailed behind her through the opulent marble corridors, weaving past the oblivious guests who remained blissfully unaware of the impending upheaval, an unsettling sensation crept up Leo's spine. As he entered the shadowy hotel room and laid eyes on the woman lying unconscious on the bed, memories of his past surged forth, overwhelming him, since he was familiar with her, and the young girl holding tightly to a plush rabbit. Her gaze mirrored his. Leo Kingston lounged by the infinity pool of the upscale hotel, his dark hair gently tousled by the warm Monaco breeze. The glass of whiskey sat idle on the small side table beside him, waiting in silence. The surroundings were idyllic, with pristine waters, impeccably dressed servers, and the soft whispers of affluent patrons relishing their secluded getaways. He possessed all that one could desire, yet an unrecognizable void lingered deep within his heart. After years of relentless effort, he had crafted his empire, transforming his keen instincts into a billion-dollar investment firm that dominated markets and dismantled rivals. Yet, triumph had been achieved at a cost. He found himself devoid of genuine connections, with no family anticipating his return, and no one to celebrate his successes alongside him. Connections, when they occurred, were merely exchanges at their peak. His whole existence revolved around mastery, over his enterprise, his schedule, and his feelings. Yet, for the first time in years, as he sat beneath the warm glow of the afternoon sun, a sense of losing grip on something washed over him, though he struggled to identify what it was. As he breathed out gently, allowing his eyes to wander beyond the pool's edge, a fleeting shadow caught his attention in the periphery. He tilted his head ever so slightly, anticipating the sight of a waiter or maybe a member of the hotel staff. But to his surprise, a little girl was standing just a few feet away from him. Her dark, curly hair framed her delicate face, while her enormous blue eyes fixed on his, conveying an expression that eluded his understanding. Amidst the fear, a strong sense of determination emerged. In her delicate hands, she held a well-loved stuffed rabbit, its fur softened and faded from countless embraces. Leo scowled. In locales such as this, the presence of children was rare, especially without their affluent guardians close at hand. He surveyed the surroundings, anticipating the sight of a caregiver or a preoccupied mother engrossed in conversation. Yet the girl stood there by herself. There was an inexplicable sense of familiarity about her, yet he found himself unable to pinpoint why. Before he could utter a word, she moved in closer, her small fingers gripping the rabbit with determination. Her voice floated softly, yet the urgency behind it was clear and compelling. "Excuse me, I kindly request your assistance." Leo sat up, his senses instantly heightened. He was not the type to meddle in others' affairs, yet her gaze held a compelling intensity that rendered his usual resolve ineffective. "What seems to be the issue?" he inquired, his tone calm yet gentler than normal. She took a deep breath, her gaze flickering toward the hotel. "My mother, she isn't waking up." For a brief instant, Leo remained still. The words settled deep within him, evoking an unusual feeling that danced between fear and a fierce sense of guardianship. He navigated intense negotiations, cutthroat corporate acquisitions, and financial upheavals that caused others to falter. Yet a young child pleading for assistance in a hushed, urgent tone. That was completely unfamiliar to him. He rose instinctively, his body in motion before his thoughts could catch up to the reason behind it. Where could she be? The girl spun around swiftly and dashed toward the hotel. Leo moved forward with unwavering resolve. Leo trailed behind the little girl in the hotel's opulent corridor, the sound of his polished shoes echoing against the marble floor as she rushed forward, clutching her stuffed rabbit with determination. The guests nearby seemed hardly aware, casually sipping their champagne or reclining in opulence, completely unaware of the pressing nature of the situation. The girl cast a quick look over her shoulder to confirm his presence, then resumed her sprint down the corridor. Her petite figure advanced with unexpected resolve, as though she understood the urgency of the moment. Upon arriving at the elevator, she made a swift decision, pivoting away and dashing toward the stairs instead of waiting. Leo paused briefly, then decided to follow. She darted forward with surprising speed for her stature, her bare feet whispering against the cool marble steps. He was accustomed to swift movements, to making split-second decisions that could alter the trajectory of entire industries. Yet there was an unsettling feeling as he trailed a terrified child up the twisting staircase, uncertain of what awaited him at the top. As they ascended to the third floor, she found herself a bit winded, yet she pressed on without hesitation. She dashed down the hallway, halting before a door labeled 3 to 12. The door stood a fraction open. Leo arrived at the moment she paused at the entrance, her petite figure bracing against the doorframe. She tilted her head, gazing up at him, her blue eyes filled with concern. For the first time, her assurance faltered. She held her rabbit tightly and murmured, "She's inside." Leo softly nudged the door ajar, entering the shadowy hotel room. The thick curtains hung closed, creating elongated shadows that stretched across the bed. The atmosphere within was dense, infused with the briny aroma of the adjacent sea, intertwined with a subtle hint of something medicinal. A bedside lamp cast a faint glow, softly illuminating the motionless figure resting on the mattress. A young woman rested silently on the bed, her dark hair spread elegantly across the pillow, her breath almost imperceptible. Her skin was a ghostly hue, and the subtle rise and fall of her chest was so delicate that, for a dreadful instant, Leo feared she might have already slipped away. He moved in, his keen eyes surveying the surroundings. On the nightstand next to the bed, an open bottle of pills rested on its side, with several tablets scattered across the glass surface. A wave of tension gripped his stomach as the truth dawned on him. He knelt beside the bed, his fingers gently brushing against the woman's wrist as he sought the faint rhythm of a pulse. The rhythm was faint, yet it lingered on. He let out a breath, experiencing a surprising surge of relief. "She's alive," he murmured, his words directed more inwardly than toward the girl. The young one had silently approached him, gazing at the woman with large, unblinking eyes. She knelt on the floor beside the bed, setting her rabbit next to her mother's hand, as if the toy held the power to summon her back. Leo retrieved his phone and contacted emergency services. The call connected without delay, and he conveyed the circumstances with his characteristic precision, providing the room number and detailing his suspicions: an overdose. The operator confidently assured him that an ambulance would be there in just a few minutes. As he concluded the conversation, he glanced at the girl, who remained rooted in her place. She continued to gaze at her mother, her small fingers clutching the woman's lifeless hand. "May I ask what your name is?" Leo inquired softly. "Sophie," she whispered softly, her gaze averted from him. He cast a fleeting look at the woman resting on the bed. He was completely unaware of her identity or the circumstances that had led her to this point. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, one truth stood clear: Sophie had sought his assistance. For reasons that eluded his comprehension, he found himself unable to turn away. The paramedics arrived swiftly, their actions deliberate and exact as they evaluated the unresponsive woman on the bed. Leo took a step back, observing intently as they monitored her vitals, inserted in 4, and readied her for transport. Sophie remained frozen in her place next to the bed, gripping her stuffed rabbit with such intensity that her knuckles turned pale. A paramedic, a woman in her middle years with gentle eyes, knelt beside Sophie. "Darling, we're going to bring your mom to the hospital so the doctors can assist her, all right?" she whispered gently. Sophie remained silent, merely nodding once, her hold on the rabbit growing firmer. The paramedic looked at Leo, a silent question in his eyes, inquiring if he was with the girl. "I'll take her," Leo said, his voice steady, though the declaration caught him off guard. Sophie raised her gaze to him for the first time since the paramedics had come. Her blue eyes shimmered with doubt, reflecting a hesitance to fully place her trust in him just yet. Yet, there was an unmistakable spark in her eyes that suggested she yearned to. The medics carefully lifted her mother onto the stretcher, fastening the straps with precision before gently wheeling her out of the room. Leo trailed behind, his hand resting reassuringly on Sophie's shoulder as they navigated the hallway, brushing past the inquisitive glances of hotel guests who had stepped out of their rooms. As they approached the ambulance, Sophie paused, glancing back and forth between the paramedics and Leo. "May I accompany her?" she inquired, her tone barely above a whisper. The paramedic paused, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. "Typically, we permit only close family members in the ambulance, dear." With a determined stride, Leo advanced. "She is merely a child," he stated, his tone resolute yet measured. "She must be with her mother." The paramedic glanced back and forth between him and Sophie, then let out a weary sigh. "Very well, she can sit in the front seat," Leo observed as they assisted Sophie into the passenger seat. He couldn't fathom why he remained rooted to the spot, why he hadn't just turned and walked away as soon as the crisis was managed. As the ambulance doors closed and the siren erupted into sound, he realized there was no turning back from this unresolved situation. He retrieved his phone, dialed his driver, and in no time, his sleek black Mercedes arrived at the curb. He settled into the back seat and instructed the driver with the name of the hospital. As they drove, he caught himself gazing out the window, thoughts swirling in his mind. There was an unsettling quality about this girl that intrigued him. It wasn't merely the circumstances. It was her essence. The way she gazed at him by the pool, the way she selected him to seek assistance amidst the crowd of others. And those captivating eyes. They evoked a sense of familiarity, a whisper of a memory, yet he struggled to pinpoint its origin. 15 minutes later, he reached the hospital. The waiting room was aglow with bright lights, yet it was thick with a palpable tension, resonating with the hushed whispers of anxious families and the distant beeping of machines. He noticed Sophie perched in one of the chairs, a rabbit resting comfortably in her lap. Her petite figure appeared even more diminutive beneath the unforgiving glare of the fluorescent lights. He approached and settled beside her. She averted her gaze from him, her focus lingering on the rabbit cradled in her hands. "They claim she was asleep," she murmured. "The timing of her awakening remains uncertain." Leo nodded, feeling a sense of uncertainty about how to respond. He had little experience in offering solace to others. He navigated the realm of figures, reasoning, and mastery. This was entirely beyond his comfort zone. Sophie finally shifted her gaze towards him, examining him with those eerily recognizable blue eyes. "What motivated you to assist us?" she inquired. The inquiry took him by surprise. He ought to have provided a straightforward response, as it was the morally correct choice, given his proximity to the situation, and because turning his back was not a viable option when a child was at stake. Yet, none of those explanations seemed completely genuine. "I'm not sure," he confessed. She inclined her head just a bit, as though weighing the truth of his words. "Are you familiar with my mother?" she inquired next. Leo parted his lips, ready to decline, yet an idea sparked in his mind. A recollection hidden away, striving to emerge. A name, a face, a history he had long since buried in the recesses of his mind. He directed his attention to the shut hospital doors, behind which the doctors were attending to Sophie's mother. In that moment, doubt crept in, and his confidence in the answer began to waver. Leo occupied a seat in the hospital waiting room, his thoughts swirling in a chaotic jumble. He had dedicated years to crafting a life defined by certainty, where every risk was measured and every decision strategic, yet this situation defied all expectations. He arrived at this hotel seeking refuge, even if just for a brief moment, from the relentless demands of managing a billion-dollar empire. And now, in an unexpected turn of events, he found himself seated next to a 6-year-old girl whose eyes held a haunting familiarity that sent a shiver through his core. Sophie remained largely silent since their arrival. She settled into the chair beside him, clutching her stuffed rabbit tightly against her chest, her tiny fingers wrapped around its frayed ears. Occasionally, she would cast a sidelong look at him, as if attempting to unravel the mystery of his presence, questioning why he remained when any other passerby would have moved on. Leo found himself uncertain about the reasons as well. A nurse finally stepped out from the restricted area, her demeanor calm yet composed. With clipboard in hand, she made her way toward them. "Are you part of the family?" she inquired, her gaze fixed on Leo. He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. The response was meant to be negative. He felt no bond with this woman, or at least that was the conclusion he had drawn. Yet, in the presence of the little girl's gaze, accompanied by a profound tug within his chest, uncertainty enveloped him. Indeed, he held back. What was he on the verge of expressing? The nurse turned her attention to Sophie. "Your mother is doing well, dear. She is currently at rest, though her strength is quite diminished. We will monitor her closely for the next 24 hours. Sophie gave a slight nod, remaining silent. She gripped her rabbit even more firmly. Leo took a moment to clear his throat. "Is it possible for us to see her?" The nurse paused briefly, then gave a nod of agreement. "She remains in a state of unconsciousness, but you are welcome to keep her company." She beckoned for them to come along. Leo rested his hand on Sophie's shoulder, leading her softly as they strolled down the brightly illuminated corridor. The rhythmic beeping of heart monitors resonated throughout the room, intertwining with the hushed dialogues of doctors and nurses as they navigated among the patients. They paused at a modest hospital room where a woman rested still upon the bed. Her dark hair spread elegantly across the pillow, her skin a delicate shade of pale, her lips gently parted as she took shallow breaths. Tubes extended from her arm, linked to an N4 drip, while the slightest hint of dark circles lingered beneath her closed eyes. Sophie released Leo's hand and dashed directly to the bedside. She set her rabbit next to her mother's arm, as though that gesture might somehow summon her return. Leo entered, his breath hitching as he took in the woman's features more clearly. Realization crashed over him like a powerful surge. Emily! His thoughts spiraled back, dragging him into long-buried memories from years past. He recalled her presence, the gentle laughter, the keen intellect, the manner in which she would provoke him in ways that no one else ever had the courage to. He recalled the summer they shared, the way her gaze held a depth that suggested he was more than the cold-hearted entrepreneur the world perceived. He recalled the clash, the intense dispute that had brought it all to a close. He recalled the moment he turned and left. Now, she found herself in a hospital bed, clinging to life. Leo let out a breath, his hand gliding over his jawline. His body tightened with the sudden awareness that sent his heartbeat racing against his chest. Sophie was no ordinary child. She belonged to him, a reflection of his very essence. The azure gaze, the shadowy locks. Her presence had an irresistible quality, tugging at something profound within him, captivating him without her even realizing it. Everything clicked into place, yet the burden of it felt overwhelming. Emily had kept it to herself all along. For 6 long years, she had concealed this from him. His hands clenched into fists at his sides as he gazed at the delicate woman in the bed, the mother of his child, the child he had never even known existed. Sophie faced him, her expression a mystery. "Were you acquainted with my mother previously?" she inquired gently. Leo's throat constricted, the words struggling to escape before he could utter them. "Indeed," he confessed, his tone softer than he had anticipated. Sophie observed him intently for an extended period. Then she took an action that utterly broke him. She extended her hand and grasped his firmly. It was cozy, inviting, and full of faith. Leo took a deep breath, intertwining his fingers with hers softly. For years, he clung to the notion of his invincibility, convinced that no one could ever rattle him. Yet, in just one evening, a young girl with azure eyes had succeeded in dismantling every barrier he had ever constructed. For the very first time, he found himself utterly uncertain about what lay ahead. Leo lingered in the hospital chair, his gaze fixed on Emily's still, unconscious face. The burden of the revelation settled heavily upon him, akin to an anchor, and for the first time in years, he sensed an utter lack of readiness for what lay ahead. His existence revolved around mastery, anticipating every action before it unfolded, and being the architect of every result. Yet this was an unexpected turn of events for him. Sophie perched beside him, her delicate fingers entwined with his, a gentle contrast to his larger grip. She was completely unaware of his recent revelation, oblivious to the fact that the man she had casually sought assistance from at the pool was more than just a passerby. He was her dad. Leo struggled to comprehend the reality before him, attempting to grasp the notion that he had a daughter, that for 6 years, a part of him had been living in the world unbeknownst to him. And Emily, she had concealed this from him. He tightened his jaw, striving to maintain his composure. He found himself unable to extract answers from a woman who lay unconscious, and he refrained from expressing his frustration in front of Sophie. The young girl had endured more than her fair share. "Does your mother discuss your father?" he inquired, striving to maintain a calm and even tone. Sophie gazed up at him, her striking blue eyes reflecting his own in a captivating way. She paused, her grip on the rabbit in her lap growing firmer. "No," she replied softly. "As a child, I would inquire," yet she consistently redirected the conversation. Leo felt a pang in his chest at that moment. Had Emily held such deep resentment that she had entirely removed him from their daughter's life? Or had she believed she was shielding Sophie from something? From that individual? He compelled himself to inhale deeply and steadily. Allowing anger to take over won't lead to any positive outcomes. What truly held significance at this moment was ensuring Emily's recovery and providing Sophie with the support she needed, so she wouldn't feel isolated during this journey. She recalled how he used to inquire, his gaze fixed on her intently. "Do you continue to ponder?" Sophie nodded, embracing the rabbit with a firmer grip. "Times," she confessed. "I once crafted tales about him. Perhaps he was a pilot or an undercover operative. He had to leave for a mission, but one day he would return." Leo sensed a fracture within himself. He had devoted his whole existence to the belief that he was too self-centered, too merciless, too consumed by his aspirations to ever embrace the role of a father. And yet, here stood this little girl, his little girl, who had devoted years to dreaming of a man she had never even encountered. Just as he was about to reply, a gentle groan escaped from the hospital bed. Sophie swiftly pivoted, her expression brightening with a sense of relief. "Mom," she exclaimed, hurriedly moving nearer. Leo rose gradually, his muscles tightening as Emily's eyelids danced with movement. She appeared utterly drained, her complexion still wan, her motions heavy as she struggled to raise her head. Her gaze fell upon Sophie first. She offered a faint smile and extended her hand, gently caressing her daughter's cheek. "Hey, darling," she murmured, her voice raspy. Sophie exhaled, the sound teetering on the edge of a sob. "I felt an overwhelming sense of fear, Mom." Emily's gaze softened, and she surveyed her surroundings, as if just now becoming aware of her location. Then, her eyes drifted beyond Sophie and settled on Leo. As soon as their gazes locked, the atmosphere in the room transformed entirely. A brief flash of surprise crossed her face before a more intricate emotion took its place. She blinked, as though trying to assure herself that her eyes weren't deceiving her, and then her body tensed up. Leo sensed the tension immediately, yet he remained still. He maintained his gaze on her, patiently anticipating her words. Emily swallowed hard, her voice a mere breath against the silence. "What brings you here?" Leo folded his arms, his face a mask of mystery. "Sophie discovered me," he stated plainly. "She sought my assistance." Emily's eyes grew a bit larger, then shifted to Sophie, who remained tightly grasping the rabbit. She came to you." Emily's voice quivered just a bit, and Leo caught the hidden significance woven into her words. Sophie had approached him. Among the myriad of guests in that hotel, she had selected him. Emily's complexion grew even more ashen as a realization dawned upon her. Her lips parted ever so slightly, and her fingers tightened around the blanket that enveloped her. Leo held her gaze for a moment, the intensity of his feelings palpable, before finally voicing the thoughts that had ignited within him the instant he laid eyes on Sophie. "I understand," he murmured softly. "I am certain she belongs to me." Emily's breath caught in her throat, her whole being frozen in place. The hospital room was enveloped in silence, thick and oppressive. Leo had dedicated his existence to unsettling influential figures, cornering them with nothing more than his mere presence. However, this was neither a negotiation nor a business transaction. This was something much deeper and more intimate. For the first time in his life, uncertainty clouded his judgment, leaving him unsure if he held the advantage. Emily lay still in the hospital bed, her breath faint as Leo's words lingered in the space around them. Her fingers clutched the blanket with a fierce intensity, as though it were her sole anchor in a turbulent sea. The rhythmic beeping of the monitors broke the stillness, yet Leo's attention was drawn solely to the transformation of her expression. Shock, hesitation, and a hint of fear danced across her features. She had anticipated this moment arriving. It was clear as day. He noticed it in her gaze, in the way she struggled to swallow, searching for the perfect words. Yet it was undeniable at this point. Leo had meticulously navigated every circumstance throughout his life. Yet in this moment, he found himself utterly unprepared for Emily's next words. Sophie perched next to her mother, observing the interaction with keen interest. Though she was young, her intelligence shone through. Leo could sense she was acutely aware of the gravity of their situation. Her tiny fingers grasped her stuffed rabbit tightly as she moved her gaze between them, a look of confusion crossing her face. At last, Emily let out a shaky breath, her voice just a soft murmur. "How did you come across that information?" Leo squinted his eyes just a bit. He stated it plainly. "She has my eyes." The moment I laid eyes on her, an unsettling feeling washed over me. However, I only validated it after conducting a DNA test. Emily recoiled at that, her body becoming rigid. "A test was conducted by you." Leo maintained his gaze. "No options were presented to me." Her lips parted slightly, yet she found no words to counter. They both understood that she had concealed the truth from him, and now it was beyond repair. A lengthy pause lingered in the air, heavy with feelings left unsaid. Leo sensed the rising frustration within him, the questions he had been attempting to suppress now clamoring for resolution. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally inquired, his tone subdued, measured. Emily averted her gaze, her fingers gripping the fabric of her hospital gown with increasing intensity. She spoke softly, acknowledging your clear stance on not wanting a family. "When I shared the news of my pregnancy all those years ago, your reaction suggested disbelief, as if it were something beyond the realm of possibility. You turned your back, Leo." His jaw clenched. That night lingered in his memory with vivid clarity. Their clash had intensified, reaching a threshold beyond which there was no turning back. He had been so engrossed in his career, so driven by his ambitions, that the notion of a child felt like an interruption, an unforeseen event, something he had not wished to acknowledge. However, that was 6 years back, and now all had changed. "You should have given me the chance to step up," he said, his voice cutting yet gentle. "That choice isn't yours to make for me." Emily released a sardonic chuckle, her head shaking in disbelief. "So, Leo, what actions would you have taken? In those days, your attention was entirely devoted to your enterprise, to demonstrating your worth to everyone around you. Do you genuinely believe you would have set aside everything to embrace fatherhood?" Leo hesitated before responding, for he understood at his core that her words held truth. The person he was at that time would not have been prepared. He had been excessively frigid, excessively self-centered. Yet he had transformed into someone entirely different. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice tinged with a gentle uncertainty this time. "Yet you never allowed me the opportunity to attempt." Emily regarded him in that moment, her face a mask of ambiguity. Her eyes held a depth of pain, yet there lingered an uncertainty, a flicker of doubt, as if she grappled with the decision to trust him. Sophie nestled closer to her mother, clutching her rabbit tightly. Mother? She inquired softly, her tones slicing through the palpable unease. Emily's demeanor shifted gently as she reached out to tuck a curl behind her daughter's ear. Indeed, my dear. Sophie glanced from one to the other, then turned her gaze to Leo. Could he be my father? The inquiry was strikingly straightforward, almost naive, and it struck Leo with more force than he had anticipated. For years, he held on to the belief that he wasn't meant for family, that the role of a father simply didn't align with his life. Yet, as he gazed into the eyes of the little girl who had unwittingly altered the course of his life, he came to understand the depth of his mistakes. Emily paused, her fingers lightly grazing Sophie's as she let out a soft sigh. At last she gave a nod. Indeed, darling, she whispered gently. He is your father. Sophie blinked, her mind racing to grasp the meaning behind the words. She turned her gaze back to Leo, a contemplative look crossing her face. Will you be here for a while? She inquired. Leo sensed a transformation within him, an unfamiliar yet undeniable presence. He had devoted years to the pursuit of success, power, and control. Yet, in that instant, everything else faded away. He had but a single response to offer. Indeed, he stated with conviction, I'm here to stay. Emily's gaze held a mysterious glimmer, yet she chose to remain silent. She gazed down at Sophie, her fingers tenderly caressing her hair. Leo was uncertain about the future, yet one thing stood out unmistakably. For the first time in his life, he had someone worth fighting for, and he was determined not to turn his back again. Leo had always been a person who acted swiftly and with conviction in his choices. In the realm of commerce, uncertainty had no place. He flourished in the realm of dominance, relishing the anticipation of each step before it unfolded for anyone else. As he sat in the hospital room, observing Emily's uncertain expression and the way Sophie regarded him with wary intrigue, he understood that this was a moment where he had no control. Sophie had just uncovered the truth, and now she perched on the edge of the hospital bed, her delicate fingers exploring the seams of her beloved stuffed rabbit. She appeared contemplative rather than distressed, as though she were reflecting on the significance of having a father she had never encountered before. Emily, on the other hand, appeared far from serene. She sat upright, her back pressed against the pillow, her fingers anxiously toying with the blanket that lay over her legs. She stole glances at Leo, and he could perceive the tempest of feelings swirling in her gaze. Uncertainty, guilt, perhaps even regret. You say you're staying, she finally said, her voice softer than it had been. But what could that possibly signify, Leo? One cannot simply enter and assume that all will be well. Leo held her gaze steadily. He expressed that he doesn't anticipate that. However, I have no intention of departing either. Emily released a quiet, mirthless chuckle. So what? Do you really believe you can step into the role of her father just like that? Leo took a deep breath, striving to maintain his composure. He grasped the reasons behind her defensiveness. For 6 long years, he had been a ghost in Sophie's life, not by his own design, but as a consequence of decisions made by Emily on his behalf. Now he stood his ground, determined not to let anyone, not even Emily, drive him away. I don't expect Sophie to trust me immediately, he said, maintaining a calm tone. I don't anticipate that from you either. However, I refuse to vanish simply because this situation is intricate. Emily observed him intently, as if attempting to discern the sincerity behind his words. Sophie glanced back and forth between them, then tilted her head ever so slightly. What comes next? She inquired. It was a straightforward inquiry, yet neither of them could provide a clear response. Leo inclined his body just a touch, his eyes fixed intently on his daughter. At this moment we proceed gradually, he remarked. I have the opportunity to learn about you. You'll come to understand who I am, and we unravel it together. Sophie pondered this for a moment, then raised her gaze to meet her mother's eyes. Is that all right, Mom? Emily paused, allowing a deep sigh to escape her lips. If that's what you desire, my dear, she murmured gently. Sophie gave a single nod, then turned her gaze back to Leo, her expression enigmatic and hard to decipher. "Do you possess wealth?" she inquired abruptly. Leo blinked, taken aback by the sudden change in the flow of dialogue. Emily emitted a startled chuckle, her head shaking in disbelief. "Sophie," she remarked, a hint of amusement flickering in her eyes despite the palpable tension surrounding them. "What is happening?" Sophie gave a nonchalant shrug. "I simply wish to understand." Leo offered a subtle smirk. Indeed, he acknowledged it. "I exist." Sophie pondered this for a moment, then gave a nod of agreement. "Understood." Emily ran her hand over her face. "Is that all there is? Is that really the question you're asking?" Sophie regarded her mother with a solemn expression. "If he's my father, I must understand whether he excels in various areas." Leo let out a soft laugh, unable to restrain his amusement. "I like to believe I have a few skills up my sleeve." Sophie appeared content with that, then returned to embracing her rabbit. Emily let out another sigh, but this time it was not one of frustration. It was a deep sense of weariness. She reclined against the pillow, shutting her eyes for a brief moment. "I can hardly wrap my head around this," she whispered. Leo observed her intently. She appeared wan, more fragile than he preferred. He was unaware of the extent of her struggles leading up to tonight, yet he sensed it was greater than she revealed. "You ought to take a break," he suggested. "I will remain with Sophie." Emily opened her eyes, a cautious expression crossing her face. "Leo." He shook his head in disbelief. "I won't be taking her anywhere. I simply wish to exist in this moment." Emily fixed her gaze on him for a heartbeat, then, with a hint of hesitation, gave a slight nod. Sophie nestled close to her mother, clutching her rabbit tightly, and leaned her head against Emily's arm. In mere moments, she drifted off into slumber. Leo reclined in the chair, observing them in silence. For the first time in his life, he found his mind free from the usual concerns of business, deals, or power. He found himself lost in thoughts of them. In that moment, he understood the depth of what was at stake. Leo remained at the hospital that night. He remained in the stiff chair beside Emily's bed, observing as Sophie nestled next to her mother, her tiny hand clutching the stuffed rabbit tightly. Occasionally, Emily would rouse, making subtle movements, yet she never distanced herself from Sophie. The atmosphere was hushed, punctuated only by the rhythmic beeping of the monitors and the distant footsteps of nurses moving through the corridor. Leo found himself unaccustomed to such profound quietude. His realm consisted of incessant phone calls, pressing emails, critical meetings, and relentless activity. Yet, within the confines of this modest hospital room, a distinct atmosphere enveloped everything. "Take your time. More authentic." He observed Emily intently, noting how her features relaxed in slumber, and how the creases of fatigue on her brow appeared more pronounced than they ought to be. For how long had she been shouldering it all by herself? How many nights had she spent wide awake, consumed by thoughts of finances, of Sophie, and of how to provide her daughter with the life she truly deserved? The revelation struck him with an intensity he hadn't anticipated. For the past 6 years, he had been entirely absorbed in his career, focused on profits and power, while Emily took on the responsibility of raising their daughter by herself. Yet she had never sought his assistance. Not for profit. Not intended for assistance. Silence. That reality was difficult for him to accept. As the initial whispers of dawn crept through the blinds, Sophie stirred, her petite frame stretching before her cerulean eyes fluttered open. She glanced around, a flicker of confusion crossing her face, until her eyes landed on Leo seated opposite her. For a moment, she simply observed him, as if weighing the reality of his presence. She propped herself up a bit and gently rubbed her eyes. "You stayed," she said, her voice heavy with the remnants of slumber. Leo gave a slight nod. "I mentioned I would do that." She remained silent for a moment, clutching her rabbit a bit tighter as she gazed at her mother, who lay peacefully asleep. To Leo's astonishment, she gracefully slipped off the bed and approached him, positioning herself merely inches apart. "Is it true that you are my father?" she inquired, her tone now subdued. Leo gazed down at her, taking in the dark curls that framed her face and the striking blue eyes that reflected his own. It remained peculiar, a notion he was attempting to comprehend, yet the solution was the simplest thing imaginable. Indeed, he remarked, "I exist." Sophie regarded him intently, as though weighing the truth of his words. Suddenly, she extended her hand and lightly grazed the sleeve of his suit jacket, her delicate fingers gliding over the material. "You feel genuine," she remarked. Leo chuckled softly, yet a tension lingered in his chest. "I exist," he assured. Sophie reflected on that for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Understood. In that moment, an undeniable change seemed to ripple through the air between them. She refrained from asking him further questions, choosing not to press for explanations he might not even possess at this moment. Instead, she gracefully settled into the chair next to him, tucking her rabbit comfortably in her lap. Leo remained seated, gazing at her, still attempting to comprehend the reality that this small child was his own daughter. For countless years, he believed he was not destined for family life, convinced that he lacked the qualities to be a father. Yet here she stood. For some inexplicable reason, she appeared unafraid of him. She had faith in him. Emily stirred, her eyelashes fluttering gently as she emerged from sleep. As soon as she awoke, her eyes locked onto Sophie. A brief flash of panic swept across her face for an instant before she recognized that her daughter was safe, sitting next to Leo. Her expression transformed into one that was more protective. "You're still present." Leo held her gaze, unfazed by the doubt lacing her words. "I made it clear that I'm staying put." Emily let out a weary sigh, her fingers tangling in her hair. She still appeared weary, yet there was an additional quality present now, something tentative. "I'm not sure how to approach this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm unsure about how to include you in her life." Leo inclined his body forward, his elbows finding a perch on his knees. "We'll work it out," he stated. United. Emily averted her gaze for a brief instant, her fingers gliding along the border of the hospital blanket. "She claimed that she doesn't even know you. She has only recently become acquainted with you." Leo gave a slight nod. "I understand. However, she approached me first, Emily. She placed her trust in me even before she had any understanding of my true self. That must signify something important." Emily exhaled deeply, her shoulders drooping a bit. "She confessed that she had kept her from you. I have no regrets about that, as at the time I didn't believe you had the desire to take on the role of a father. But now," she paused, her eyes drifting toward Sophie. Leo observed the turmoil etched on her features, the apprehension of allowing him closer, the anxiety of what it could signify for Sophie. Yet, he also perceived another emotion, a hesitant glimmer of hope. For years, he had constructed barriers, persuading himself that connections were mere diversions, that affection was a flaw. As he lingered in that hospital room, observing his daughter's quiet faith in him, a faith he felt he hadn't earned, he came to a profound realization. Perhaps he had been mistaken all this time. For the first time in his life, Leo Kingston yearned for something beyond mere success. He longed to embrace the role of a father. The gentle morning light filtered through the hospital room's window, bathing the tranquil scene within in a warm, soft glow. Emily sat straight in the hospital bed, her fingers mindlessly gliding over the blanket while she observed Sophie, who remained nestled next to Leo in the chair. The young child had drifted back into slumber, her beloved stuffed rabbit held securely in her embrace. Leo remained still. He sat there with an air of ease, yet his thoughts were in a whirlwind. In just a few hours, everything he knew had changed, leaving him to confront a reality he had never imagined. He was blessed with a daughter, a 6-year-old girl who had lived her life perceiving her father as nothing more than an elusive enigma, a puzzle her mother never chose to solve. Emily let out a breath, pulling his focus back to her. He noticed the doubt in her eyes, the lingering uncertainty that had been present since the moment she understood he was aware of the truth. He grasped it fully. She had nurtured Sophie on her own, made every choice for her, and now, unexpectedly, She faced the challenge of finding a way to include him in a life he should have always been a part of. "I'm not sure how this will turn out," Emily confessed, her tone soft and measured. "She has always been without a father, Leo. She hasn't even requested one since she was a child." Leo observed her intently for a prolonged moment before responding. "That doesn't imply she isn't in need of one." Emily recoiled just a bit, as though his words had hit a nerve within her, yet she chose not to contest them. She looked at Sophie, her expression warming as she gently tucked a loose curl behind her daughter's ear. "I'm afraid," she admitted, "it's not solely for her. It benefits me as well." Leo inclined his body a bit, placing his forearms on his knees. "I understand," he replied, his tone steadier than his emotions suggested. "However, it's important for you to grasp this, Emily. I refuse to turn my back on this. I lost 6 years of her life. I won't let another moment slip away." Emily gazed at him intently, as though probing for any signs of weakness in his resolve. Yet there were none. His words carried weight. They weren't mere empty expressions. He truly meant each and every word. After an extended pause, she exhaled softly, her fingers threading through her hair. "All right," she replied at last. "We proceed at a leisurely pace. We navigate our way through it step by step." Leo nodded, a wave of relief sweeping through him. "That's all I seek." Emily's lips sealed tightly, and she breathed out once more, as though compelling herself to let go of a lifetime of fear and uncertainty. After a brief pause, she revealed her fondness for chocolate chip pancakes. "It's the sole breakfast she will consume without any objections." Leo's eyebrows arched subtly at the unexpected shift in dialogue, but then he understood her intent. She was offering him a token, something diminutive yet significant. A peek into the life of their daughter. "Chocolate chip pancakes," he echoed, etching it into his mind. Emily paused once more, then pressed on. "She despises the rumble of thunder. She clings to that rabbit each night, despite its worn and tattered state. She enjoys coloring, but prefers markers since she believes crayons are too fragile. She hums softly while she focuses, unaware of her own melody." Leo felt a constriction in his chest as he absorbed the sounds around him. Every detail seemed to open a portal to the life he had overlooked, a life he ought to have embraced. "She will have questions," Emily remarked, her tone now more gentle. "She'll be curious about your absence earlier." Leo's jaw tightened, for that was the one inquiry he found himself at a loss to respond to. How did he convey to a 6-year-old that he had been unable to recognize the truth? He had turned his back on something he hadn't even realized was genuine. He finally declared, "I will reveal the truth to her. I was unaware of that. If I had it, I would have stayed without a doubt." Emily locked eyes with him, probing for any hint of deceit. Yet there was nothing. Following a lengthy silence, she gave a nod. "Understood." Leo reclined, sensing a calmness envelop him. He was completely unaware of what lay ahead, oblivious to the time it might take for Sophie to genuinely recognize him as her father. Yet he would bide his time. He would demonstrate his worth each and every day, not only to her but also to Emily. For the first time in his life, he found something truly worth battling for, and he was determined to hold onto it. This narrative delves deeper than the mere revelation of a billionaire uncovering the existence of his daughter. It delves into themes of atonement, accountability, and the surprising paths life takes to confront us with the decisions we previously evaded. Leo Kingston begins as an individual who is convinced he has mastery over all aspects of his life, his enterprise, his standing, and his feelings. However, discovering Sophie breaks that fantasy. She embodies an element he never anticipated, the opportunity to engage in a narrative larger than his own existence. When he discovers that she is his daughter, everything in his life changes dramatically. His identity is no longer shaped by power and wealth. It is now defined by the journey of fatherhood. Emily is, indeed, a multifaceted character. She isn't merely a woman harboring a secret. She is an individual who faced a challenging choice, influenced by Leo's character during that period. She shielded her daughter in the manner she understood best. Her reluctance to allow him in goes beyond mere anger. It stems from a deeper sense of fear. She fears the implications of allowing him into Sophie's world, worried that he might depart, that he could shatter Sophie's heart just as he once shattered hers. Yet, at the core of this narrative lies Sophie. She instinctively reaches out to Leo, even before she knows who he is. She embodies trust, resilience, and a pure, untainted hope. Ultimately, she becomes the catalyst that inspires both Leo and Emily to embrace the unknown. The concluding moments of the narrative do not revolve around an ideal, blissful resolution. Rather, they reveal the inception of something genuine. Leo may not be able to wipe away the past, yet he holds the power to shape what lies ahead. Emily may not be able to reverse her decisions, yet she can embrace the idea that transformation is possible for others. And Sophie, she finally receives what she has always silently desired, a father who selects her. The charm of this tale resides in its flaws. It's about discovering how to create something fresh from the remnants of previous errors. It explores themes of forgiveness, the opportunity for second chances, and the profound truth that often, the most surprising individuals can leave a lasting impact on our lives.